And so this is the Plan Your Start podcast. And I have today with me very special guest. This is the two ladies behind the brand and the business of Coco and Dash. And effectively is right in the core of Dallas, right? I wouldn't want to say downtown, but right in the core of Dallas. We have this amazing store that people rave about. People travel quite a far distance to visit. It has the most interesting, hard to find, exquisite home decorating items that one can find. And so, and what proves that is your following on Instagram and social media is like continues to be massive and grows. So congratulations on all that success. And it seems to be right up your alley from your personal beliefs and your personal talents and your personal personalities. So again, congrats on that, and welcome to my little podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Right. I'm excited to have you. And I like that little Texas drawl in the accent. I like that too. I get caught up in our Tampa.
You're the one with the accent. We don't have accent.
You don't know about it, right? So it's perfect. I love it. And I plan to tour the whole country with my guests. I'm going to pick up a little bit from everywhere. So I want to open this up by just reading a little bit of a background on Teddie and Courtney. So Teddie and Courtney Garrigan are the mother and daughter dynamos whose personal and creative style is the foundation for their award-winning home decor retail shop, Coco and Dash. Coco and Dash brand arouses the spirit of Southern hospitality and a life well lived through unpretentious luxury, style, and comfort. At the heart of Coco and Dash brand story is the promise of creating a home that celebrates life by combining people and things that are loved. While Courtney has developed a signature style that embodies beauty and function, she has a propensity for quirky finds that are seamlessly incorporated with classic elements. Passionate about her love of perfection and design, she contributes a fresh approach to the retail business. With a love of all things home, Teddie is known for her keen eye and a sense of style resulting from a lifetime of travel. A devout Southerner who grew up living in Europe, she brings a relaxed and fun sophistication to Coco and Dash, along with a modern sense of luxury that is fresh, stylish, and timeless. Teddie and Courtney shared an irreverent sense of humor, and we're going to find out more about that today, and use their professional backgrounds in conflict resolution and counseling every day in the retail world. Well, that sounds interesting. And how do you do that? Coco and Dash is a two-time winner of the ARTS Award for Best Home Decor Shop in Midwest, Southwest. It was named one of House Beautiful's best shops in America and has been named Best of D Magazine and Best of D Home. So how lucky am I to have you two on my little show? So welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So I want to start by just, on the top, just maybe describe the stories. You would describe it in your own words and what it's like today, not necessarily with this COVID situation, but generally, how do you feel about your business and how would you describe it today? Who would like to maybe go first on that one?
Mom, why don't you start?
Well, okay. So today, what Coco and Dash represents really is our love of family and home and developing memories with people friends and entertainment. So we started as strictly home accents, and now we've increased where we have furniture, we have a design studio, and we also are ready to launch custom bedding. So there's our brand is based on a combination of product, physical space, and environment. And all of those things have to work together to give you that feeling that customers get when they come to Coco and Dash. And we want everybody to love their experience there. You don't have to buy something to enjoy the experience and to feel like you're welcome.
I think that's cool. I love that you add that. You don't have to buy something. So, you're creating a browsing experience, and ultimately the people that want to buy will buy, right? And you're just patient for that.
Correct. That's
Coco,
correct.
Courtney/Coco, what would you add?
Mom pretty much summed it up. We are, as she said, we were just about to launch our bedding custom bedding shop. It's a shop within a shop, basically. We are adding that element to the business, and we were just about to do that before we ended up having to shut down. So when we come back, we're going to be able to come back with something new, and hopefully it will get people excited to come back in.
Fantastic. I bet you guys are chomping at the bit to get this thing back open and back and running again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's your lifeblood. You must live to like go out there and engage with customers and like touch things and engage with people. Like if you can't do that, like what's the business, right? It's really tough.
I used to think that I never had enough time at home, and now
right.
I'm really excited to be able to get back soon. We hope.
I was showing people your homepage, and I think Coco, you're working on a new site. Is that right?
This is the new site. We just launched the new site, and we are. If you scroll to the collections, you'll see there's stuff coming. It
Gotcha.
Just you click on it, it'll just take you to a coming page. But we're
nice.
Close. We're hoping to launch that hopefully at the latest by Monday. Don't quote me on that, but we're very close. Fantastic.
Well, it looks great. It's really clean. It's a really attractive site. Okay,
it's like
so we've shown.
Shop.
What's that?
I said it's like our shop.
Yeah, it's right. Exactly.
White background with lots of color inside. So
perfect. Okay, great. So we've just shown everybody, you got the Instagram, Pinterest, you got your new site. I want to talk briefly about our sponsors. So our sponsor is Executive Launch. So Executive Launch is an all-in-one turnkey solution for folks who want to start a company that have executive experience. So this is geared towards executives that are in companies that have built up the expertise and the relationships and the product knowledge, and they're, making great money, but realize that ultimately they're making money for the owners. They're not making money for themselves, and they ultimately will always make a great living, but possibly not be able to realize their full potential, right, in what they do. So this is their homepage. They deliver custom fixed price solutions to get startups off the ground, and it can vary anywhere from a solo small group company to a physical product or a virtual product, e-commerce company software, all the way to retail based geographic company like Coco and Dash, right? So in fact, both of you guys were executives at some point to be able to start a company, so you can really relate with this. Imagine when you were in that job and you were kind of working massive hours and making great money, but wondering if you were ever going to be able to make a dent in the world the way you want to make a dent in the world, and bring all of that full talent, self-actualization forward. So that's what Executive Launch does. And they've been a sponsor with us now for a few weeks, and they have a whole 5-step program to get someone from the corporate world to the startup world. Okay. So I want to get us headed back. All right. So where I want to start on this interview really is kind of where I first met Coco. So Coco Courtney, you and I met 6 or 7 years ago at a conference, and it was for the National Association of Professional Organizers. And I had what's it, right? Which one? Which city? Do you?
California?
Oh, I thought maybe you said the city, but no.
No, I think we were in California. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, but it was I feel like it was 10 years ago. It
might have been 10. Yes, but it probably was, but I don't keep track of time very well. I had a platform there that was all about organizing one's life on the computer, from documents and calendar notes and so forth. And you were actually a professional organizer with a lot of clients and things that you were doing. So why don't you kind of describe that, but then walk us back a little bit about what led you to that point, your career, and then what got you to where you are today.
Okay, very quickly, I actually worked as I was a chemical dependency counselor in an outpatient treatment facility that was, all of our referrals were from the judicial system.
Right.
So they were all criminals of some sort, either multiple offenses or whatnot. I actually started with them for an internship before I even graduated from college, and then they hired me to stay on after I graduated, and I worked there for a bit, and then I met my husband, not through the judicial system. He was not a client, and and then life started to happen, and then children and that, and I did stay home for quite a while, but I was very antsy, and I needed a creative outlet. I've always had a creative itch, and so I started doing various things. I won't go into detail, but I started doing different things. One of which, the big one, was I had a children's art studio that I was sort of a move around kind of a teacher, and then would set up in different places. And then I eventually opened a brick and mortar. Unfortunately, I opened it right before the crash in the 90s, and it just, extra art lessons for your children are not a priority to spend money on. Yeah. So I ended up closing that down, but it was a very interesting experience, for sure. I learned a lot. And then I started doing professional organizing because so many people had come into the studio saying, who did all this? I'm like, I did, not that hard. And so people started hiring me, and I thought, I can do this. And I did. I made a business out of it. And that's how we met at a conference. And then life happens again, and I ended up getting a divorce and needed I had the opportunity to make a change. And I decided one day, while driving with Mom on a mother-daughter trip, we were going somewhere together in the car, and she wasn't really paying attention. And I said, we should open a store. And she read a magazine. Okay. And then, like a year later, we're moving into a building. And I mean, it just took off, and we immediately started talking about it. We immediately started planning, and I mean, that's just kind of how we roll. And so here we are today.
Let me guess, was it like a design, like a Southern Living magazine?
It was. She was looking at one of the shelter magazines, and
I think we were on our way to Marburger.
Yeah,
we were.
I think we were going to the big Marburger show. Yeah,
and it was something that we used to do twice a year together, and which is it was just a fun, shopping excursion is what it is, but for furniture, antiques, and stuff like that. And a lot of time we never bought anything. We just went to visit with friends, and we developed relationships over, the years that we've been doing it. And
right. And so that's how it started, just a conversation riding down the road. That's really pretty cool, actually, from a mother-daughter perspective. The trust and the background being there. That
you crazy, for one.
Right. What was that?
I said, or crazy.
Or crazy, cool, yeah. Or crazy. Wouldn't recommend it to most people, but to a mother-daughter or a good close friend, things can be that you can take those kind of leaps when you have trust in history and relationship with people. I think that's a neat component to that. I wouldn't recommend doing that with a stranger or someone you barely know. Right. So thank you, Coco. That actually, some of those nuggets in there I didn't know fully. So Teddie, if you could, so you had opened a store at one point as well. I read at some point in your career. So maybe if you don't mind, walk us through your career and your career a little bit, and even that point where you had a store, which is kind of interesting.
Sure. So my background, my degree is in political science and economics, and my background, my professional background, I started working in politics and government, and I was the campaign chairman or the finance chairman, generally one of those two positions, in a number of campaigns for congressional campaigns, senatorial campaigns from Texas. And I was the first woman to chair a mayoral campaign when I think that was like 34 or something in Dallas, and he won. So I always loved politics. I still do. I love all of the kind of the crisis that surrounds it. But so I did that. I've always loved anything to do with home decor, and I think that really comes from the way that I grew up. And I don't know if you want to go into that.
Yeah, I do want to get into that. Yeah. Yeah, the way you grew up is a big part of this story, I think.
Right. I grew up as an Air Force brat. We traveled a lot. We lived in Europe for extended periods 2 times, and in Germany. So I traveled a lot to Italy and France and Austria. I spent a lot of wonderful years there, and I was very impacted by especially the architecture there. And that has always stayed with me. But fast forward back to when I first started my career, at the same time, because I did have that love of home, I was always very focused on my home. I loved doing things. And at the same time that I was serving as the senior advisor to the mayor of Dallas, I decided to open a home. I didn't open. I bought a store that had been in Dallas for 35 years, I think, at the time I bought it. And it was very high-end, fine jewelry store, but they also at that time sold high-end antiques and silver. We were the largest privately held silver and jewelry company in the state. So I did that at 35, and I bought that about 18 months before the big savings and loan crash in Texas. So of course the timing was horrible. And having done that, I was determined that, we were going to hang on to the business. Courtney was just a kid. I mean, I don't know, 9, 10
and
years old.
I've seen the picture. She was a cute kid too. I've seen the picture.
She was a beautiful child, child. And just as mouthy as she is now, but she was always a little firecracker. So anyway, I held on to that store, and finally in 1990, I just said, this makes no sense. Every high-end store, what we call carriage trade stores in Dallas, every one of them closed. I sold the assets to my company, closed it. It was not fun, but I was determined, as I always am, you just move on to the next thing. So at that point in time, I really sort of diverted back to my other career, and because this was almost like it was kind of like wearing these 2 totally different hats. This very serious advisory hat that I wore in government, and then the other hat of being a business owner and an entrepreneur, and the 2 really had nothing to do with each other. It's just that they fed opposite sides of my personality. I'm very right brain and left brain, so I have a lot of creativity that needs to be fueled, but I also have a big urge to fulfill a love of business and an interest in human nature, which you see very well in government. So I decided to get back onto the other track, and that was not difficult. I immediately started working with clients that came back to me, and I sort of diverted away from politics and focused mostly on business, because I would have CEOs contact me and say, can you help us figure this out? Because I had by that time sort of developed a reputation of being, I was able to ferret through things and correct mistakes. It's what
Right.
commonly is sort of referred to as a fixer. And I've never liked that term, but because I'm super sensitive, but I'm also very highly vigilant. And so I can pick up things I was being paid because I could do that. So I went on, fast forward again through a lot of great client experiences. I worked in the Middle East for a long time, helping American companies enter that market. I worked in South America. There was a lot of interesting work being done, but at the same time, I really always had that love of retail. And then Courtney and I would take these trips, and I had just finished with a client that was starting to be more trouble than it was worth. And I thought, I don't want to re-up here. And the truth was they didn't like what I was telling them, and I don't think they wanted to re-up. So it was one of those where everybody took their ball and went home. And so I was sitting around my swimming pool, and that lasted for, golly, a week.
5 minutes.
I hated it. I hated it. And people, other women, I live in a high rise, and other women would be out there. And I kept thinking, I can't do this. And I would, think I'm just going to have to hold my head under the water. I've got to find something to do. So Courtney and I did, about that time, I think, Courtney, is when your divorce happened. And so we did start taking these mother-daughter trips, and because Courtney's my only daughter, and we were spending more time together. And then that was actually the way that conversation unfolded. But I do want to say that part of my expertise in working with businesses was developing business plans. And so we knew instantly, we talked about the fact, okay, we've got to have a business plan. This isn't something that we're just going to go lease a space and buy a bunch of pretty things. We've got to know where we're going to go and who we want to be. What do we want to bring to the market that's different than exists at this time?
Right. So that's important. You knew how to do that market research, positioning, and knowing that we wanted to your point, not just serve your interests, but make sure you had real customers out there that would want to support your business, right? And
right, because when you are just doing something to appease your own need without the supporting players, it isn't going to succeed.
That's right. Even though in your mind you think it will, by all means, of course, but you find out the hard way that not so much.
Just because, you can say, oh my gosh, this is a wonderful idea, and we're wonderful, we're funny, people will love us. That is not going to pay your bills.
That's right. And that's a great segue into you guys starting the business, right? So, and I think I read that you spent a while buying the products, but before that you had to put the thesis and the plan and the whole brand concept together before you knew what to go buy, right? Is that about how it went?
Well, Courtney, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that we did spend a year planning and buying before we ever opened the doors, and we had stuff kind of stored all over, and we actually rented a space from a mall that was getting ready to close, and so they had all these empty spaces, and I knew somebody that knew somebody, and they said, you can store everything in here. So, we would go to the mall and raise up our big gate and put all our stuff in there. And we literally—
It's very glamorous.
That's great.
It was very glamorous, yeah. So we kept everything in storage for almost, I think, Mom, don't you think, a full year? And then we we thought long and hard and looked long and hard for a space, and we wanted to make sure was the right neighborhood, was it the right what did we want, and I think at the time, I think yes, we made the right decision. We love our space, but I think we are going to be moving soon, and which we're looking forward to being able to grow and do some other additional things.
Right. So you guys were stacking stuff in this. You guys were stacking stuff in this warehouse, in this warehouse spacing, right? And you were looking for a space during that time, right?
And to answer your question, the part of the question about how did we know what to buy, we knew originally from the get-go that what we wanted to do was stay true to our own aesthetic that we have in our homes and that we are familiar with and that we know about. We didn't want to be something that we weren't going to appeal just because everybody else was doing a certain look. We were going to do that because that was popular.
Well, and that was what's, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is that we also knew there was a void in the market in Dallas. And as far as we were concerned, and that's why we were starting to cast our net in a broader way to find things for our own homes. And Courtney was starting a new home for herself. And so, I mean, we had a focus of what we needed to find for our own gratification, but that's what we based the market need on. Because there's nothing special about us. If we like it and are looking for it, probably there are a lot of other people out there looking for that same thing.
Got it. Coco, you were going to add something, I think.
No, that's just what I was going to say, is that the whole reason we started the thought process was because I was trying to find something. I mean, I was starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, I don't want a pottery barn. Not that there's anything wrong with
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
But like, it's just, that's not my thing. And I wanted something different and I couldn't find it. I knew it was there, but it just wasn't there in Dallas.
Yeah. You guys might cringe when I tell you this. Ashley and I, when we got married, we were obsessed with the Bombay furniture.
Oh gosh, yes, I remember it. I remember
we bought our first home, our furniture. We just went crazy on that stuff.
Well, everybody loved it.
Yeah.
Everybody loved Bombay.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
You know, that company's a Fort Worth company.
Really?
It was a Fort Worth company.
Wow, we were obsessed, and it was one of those things that you get so burned out on that you never want to see Bombay stuff again. Never want to see it again. All right, so this is cool. So I like how this worked out. A lot of good things going on here. You were trying to source something for yourself, which we call it in the business sometimes scratch your own itch. You were trying to scratch your own itch. The problem in the market was it wasn't there. You knew that you weren't that weird to the point where you knew there were probably a lot of other people that liked the kind of things you liked. And then you had this really great business partner opportunity with someone you knew and trusted, and your mom has a lot of business experience, obviously would have more experience than you at that time. And so what a great combination. So so you opened the store without getting into, unless there's a really great story in there. You open the store and you start working together. Now, the theme of this show, and I don't think I covered the topic too well in the beginning, was when your business partner is your family member or close friend, right? And so where we're going with this conversation for sure is just and we're going to help a lot of people out there with this conversation, is why we're doing it, right? Which is the challenges that come up with that. So when did it first, okay, we've got the normal mother-daughter stuff that would have been before, after, and during. We're going to just kind of exclude that for a second. When did like the first new stuff pop up? Was it in the warehousing step, or was it in the after the doors open step? When did it, like, was it maybe when the stakes got higher? And at what point did you kind of go, wait a minute, I am not sure that there's something kind of there's something that's kind of amiss in the relationship. When did it begin?
Well, I think it was probably when we were trying to do everything ourselves.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning of the business, there were only the two of us.
Yeah.
And neither of us, although I understand and Courtney understands the principles of bookkeeping and, the whole spreadsheet
Yeah.
debacle.
Yeah.
It's not what we like doing. We don't like it.
We're not
so
spreadsheet people. I can
We
do
call
it, but
We call them spreadsheet jockeys in the business too.
Yeah, it is not our thing. So we would both try and kind of avoid that. And then we knew that somebody had to focus on it. And we kept, don't you think, Courtney, kind of trying to kick it back and forth to each other? And
yeah,
there was no financial crisis that led to a point where we said, wait a minute, we've got to take care of something. But I do think that the bookkeeping issues were the things that started
right
kind of getting irritated with
irritating
each other.
Yeah. So Courtney, what's a good story that comes to mind when I say spreadsheets? In this part of the story, is there anything that you remember how you would characterize it?
I know what I remember most is tax season.
Mm-hmm.
And every year when it came time to do taxes, which is a stressful time for anyone who owns a business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that it's not a bad stress. It's just that it's a tedious stress.
Yeah.
And it fell on me every year. Mm-hmm. And I did not enjoy it. I was resentful that I had to do it. Now I knew that somebody had to buckle down and do it. And so I did it. But not my favorite thing. And I know that things, when there's that kind of tension and resentment, there's stuff comes out sideways. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the first bit of, that's the first thing I remember is really causing
right. So did
tension.
you feel like that certain jobs were being kind of avoided or kind of shuffled off to the other, or things that they didn't want to do? Like what's kind of the next kind of situation that you would imagine where I'm not happy, where maybe I'm not happy, or maybe I've got a real, what was that?
So I know what you mean. I think our issue, and Mom, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like our issue was that we were both trying to do everything together. And it just, I have good things that I'm good at. Mom has things that she's good at. Yeah. But we were doing, we felt we had this mentality that we both had to be involved in every single aspect of the business at the same time.
Right. And it's interesting looking back at that, because I know professionally you cannot do that.
Yeah.
And we were becoming burnt out. Now, I do think there was another issue, and that was that we were there so much and we were so tired, and then there were new relationships that were coming into play. Mm-hmm. That I know I felt like that, okay, we're not paying enough attention to what's here. And so there were small things. It was never a big thing. There were small things, and they compounded. Right. And then we did hire Heather at that point. Heather still works for us, and she's now the store manager. But so we had some relief, because there were, oh my gosh, Courtney, for 2 years, we didn't take a day off. Sure. We're not open on Sundays, but we didn't take a day off. So, but I think in really starting to, and being honest, I think for me, it was when I felt like there was a third party. My husband, Courtney's dad, is one of these guys who, he's an attorney and he's a worker. He is a worker, but it doesn't matter what we want to try. He is supportive. And so he has always been very supportive, and he never, ever has weighed in on anything I do professionally or, well, I guess professionally, unless I ask for him to weigh in. Right. And so I'm not used to someone tossing out, have you thought of this? And that was starting to happen. Courtney's smiling. I think she knows what I'm, and so I was starting to have a resentment that this outside voice, I was starting to hear this third outside voice from someone who Courtney had a relationship with, and I didn't want that voice in this business because there wasn't a place for it.
Right.
So I think I was starting to get resentful, and at that time, I think Courtney was starting to get resentful because there was so much going on at the store, and she was trying to have a life. And it was, we were at that point go figure. And we were at that point in a new business where you can't have a life.
Yeah.
I mean, people, it's so easy to say you can do it all. You can't do it all.
Yeah.
And when you're starting a business, it's like birthing a baby, and that's got to be your focus, and you've got to.
It's like all that matters.
Your all.
It's like it's kind of all that matters, right? Because survival is on the line, whether you realize it or not, right? Like just you may or may not be there in 3 months if you can't have the sales you need to have in the next 2 months or 3 months, right?
Right.
So like when you say that's like a big reason why you said you never took a day off and you were working around your full focus and it's because of like the survival mode. So did you guys feel that?
I think so, but in fairness to Courtney also, and I know you're aware of this, we have different work habits. We both have very strong work ethic. Courtney has a wonderful work ethic, but our habits are different. And at that point, this is going back, we started like that 2013 is when we started talking about and working on this business. So it goes back a way, and I just assumed, because I had never worked with Courtney, that she had the same work habits as I did. Right. And I am
she is my mother, and that is
because I'm her mother. And why would she not? And how could she have not absorbed all of my perfect traits, which of course are not so perfect, but people who worked for me, who I wasn't related to, who were on my staff or something, were never going to say, oh my God, you're killing us. Because I don't know if I'm a perfectionist, but I do believe in excellence.
Yeah.
And if you can't do it in an excellent fashion, don't do it.
Right.
And I'm certainly not going to be involved in it because I can't do anything half-assed.
That's right. And
which was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, a lot of pressure
on a daughter.
It was a tremendous amount.
Right. And I don't, and that is not how that's not how I roll. I get stuff done, but I do it in a different way, and I do it in a way that works for me.
Yeah.
And when we started to butt heads about who was doing what, and and there was always some confusion. Well, I thought you were going to answer that email. Well, no, I thought you were going to answer that email. And did you call them? No, I thought I was going to call them. Did you? It's just this.
Yeah.
And it came to a head very quickly.
It really did. Because I will say this: we are a family, albeit a very small little family, but we don't like to leave things unsaid. We want to get to and I'm sure that has a lot to do. There's a number of reasons, but also one being in counseling. I mean,
Mhm.
we all just, we want to talk about it and we want to fix it and we want to move on.
Right.
And it had gotten to a point where mom and I could not, it was really uncomfortable just to be in the shop with her at the same time alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to go.
Right.
I wanted to avoid having any kind of conflict.
Because Courtney
I
doesn't
am not,
like confrontation.
I am not a conflict girl. I do not like conflict. Mom thrives in it.
Well, that was my area of expertise.
That's because that's exactly. So, you know, and so she would say things like, I just don't understand how you're a procrastinator. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm sorry. And her response to me one time was, but you're my daughter. Right. I'm like, what the hell does that mean?
You know,
like,
which means
sorry.
like, I can't, I feel like I know so many kids that become almost the opposite of their parents. And I think some of that's by choice, almost design. And then like, so I'm not surprised at all. I see it in my own life over and over again that children often become the opposite of their parents, you know? And that's kind of a neat thing about nature, isn't it? In a way, like nature has a way of kind of keeping the world in balance. It's interesting.
Yeah. And for sure we have a lot of similarities. I mean, Heather and Trey, who work for us,
yeah,
the four of us could be standing in the shop and mom and I can have a complete conversation with very little actual verbiage between the two of us, and certainly not complete sentences, and omitting all kinds of facts. And we know exactly what we're talking about. And then Heather and Trey can be like, what just happened? What did you, and or
they'll think we're arguing and we're not arguing. Now they don't.
But that's the other thing. They think we're arguing all the time and we're really not. It's just that's how we talk.
So Courtney, I appreciate you sharing that part about not wanting to go into the office and that you were just kind of almost done like that. I think that's the really interesting part of the story, is that you guys kind of hit rock bottom. And frankly, that's where most people, and that's really important to put a point on that, because that's normally where it fails and falls down and falls apart. Like that's where it always falls down, right there between close friends or close family, right there. So something different was about you two, and that you hit this kind of place where you barely could be in the room together. You could barely talk. You just didn't like each other at that time. And oh my God. So what turned that around? Who and what and when? What comes to mind?
Well, I think for starters, when you think about the fact that there's that family dynamic, if it were a friend, close friend, acquaintance, you could walk away and it would hurt, but I can't walk away from the family aspect. Like, she's always going to be my mother. And she claimed,
or am I, as Spencer would say.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like, I knew that there was either going to be a resolution or family holidays were going to really suck. I mean, that's, you know, and I didn't want that. I knew there was a solution, and I knew that I think we both knew, I think I can speak for both of us. We both knew that there's a solution. We just needed to figure that out, and we needed to really talk about it. And so, you know, we had some other family things going on, and we ended up seeking counseling for ourselves.
Okay.
Well, before we get to that, though, I do want to say that for me, what happened was I knew this was going terribly wrong, and I was in the same boat Courtney was in, that I thought, I don't want to be doing this, and I don't have to do it. And why do I want to be unhappy when I don't have to be? And then I would think, wait a minute, because I don't think I said it, but my professional credentials are as an expert in crisis management, conflict resolution, reputation management, and negotiation skills. So those are all things that I can help anybody in the world pretty much resolve a conflict and the parties walk away feeling pretty good, but I couldn't do it with my own daughter.
No.
And I would lay awake at night thinking, why I must be awful at this. Maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was, and I can't make this happen. So I think almost at the same time we said, we've got to do something. You're a counselor. I'm an expert in communications that have gone all to hell.
Yeah.
And
well,
we've got to do something. So we said, look, let's find a third party and go talk to them. Let's go talk to a counselor about this.
I guess that's two things. One, it doesn't surprise me that someone who's an expert at something can't do it for themselves. Like I think it's very common, right? It's so common. Like being good, fundamentally your skill that you just described, counseling and conflict, means it wasn't because of your knowledge. It was because you were really good at doing it for other people. Like that's very different than for yourself. And because when it's your own emotions, as we know,
Totally.
You're completely upside down. But I wanted to before we get to the couples counseling, I wanted to know like who kind of came hand in hand or sat down and suggested this or kind of broke the ice on this, or do you remember?
Dad.
I think I don't know. No, it wasn't Dad, but I really do think that I thought we need to have a third person and we need to talk to somebody, because what I was okay losing a business. I was not okay losing a daughter.
Yeah.
And
exactly. That's what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not something I was willing to do, because paradoxically, Courtney and I, when she was growing up, we never had a contentious relationship. I don't recall ever thinking, oh my God, I can't stand having a teenage daughter. We just didn't have that kind of conflict.
Right.
But I do think because Courtney really does not like conflict of any kind, and I would get paid to charge full force into conflict, because the truth is I like resolving that. I like knowing I'm going to come out on the other side of this with an answer and things are going to be better. So I think we both, I think it was just probably a conversation of, would you be opposed to talking if I found somebody to talk to?
Yeah.
And then I found our counselor.
Yeah.
And it was like couples counseling, but it's something I personally think I love counseling anyway, but I think mothers and daughters can benefit in probably after us having gone through this for a lot of reasons.
Absolutely. And by the way, too, you said you never had that conflict before. It doesn't surprise me either, because until you put two people together in close proximity trying to accomplish a task, it's very different than anything that happens in my family. Like my daughter and I have a wonderful, easygoing relationship, but put us in close quarters on a really important task that's like survival's at risk, like it wouldn't be the same. So I could totally imagine that context being a big factor in terms of.
And it's interesting because what's that TV show, The Great Race, or what's it called, where you get
The Amazing Race.
The Amazing Race.
Yeah.
I always thought I'd love to do that, and the person I thought I would want to do it with would be Courtney. Because I've always thought, oh my God, if I was in any kind of trouble, it would be Courtney and her dad. And because the other thing that is so interesting is, even though she doesn't like conflict, Courtney's not a retiring person. She is somebody who always does the right thing, except you did say some things to me during heated moments that were crushing. But other than that, she always does the right thing. She's honest, she's ethical, and she has all these qualities that I admire in a person on a personal level, but also on a business level.
Yeah. It seems like to me too, like, I think we lost you, Teddie, for a second on camera.
Yeah, my battery, let me.
Hey, you're back. There you are.
Plug this in. Let me plug this in.
But I'm also good. You're doing good. We'll wait for you to kind of get caught up. Okay, good. Looks like you're good. Are you plugged in?
Do you want to plug in?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Please do.
So.
Yeah. We'll take care of that. But go ahead. Well, first of all, I was going to just say that as much as I could see why you would want Courtney on your team, because instead of kind of spending a lot of time talking about it, analyzing, I get the feeling Courtney kind of just gets into doing it, right? I would imagine she's kind of
There's never something that I can say, I have an idea. Now, we both will say to each other, that is the stupidest thing you've ever come up with, because there are a lot of them. Uh-oh. Hold on. It's because I'm plugged in.
One of my biggest pet peeves is she never has her stuff charged.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're back.
So we're going to just edit that out. No problem. But I was talking about Courtney being you wanted her on your team. You always imagined she'd be a great member of your team, because I sense that she's like roll her sleeves up and start kind of working on the problem, taking action kind of person, which would have
right.
been
And I can say there are things we would do on trips. I'd say, hey, why don't we do this? Neither of us ever says, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
We're always up for an adventure. We're up for a challenge. But that's kind of when we're on a footing where, I don't know, because we're not like one of us is the boss and one of us isn't.
Yeah. Well, I want to come back to something.
We're both bossy.
Before we move into the therapy, one more last thing. I just wanted everyone, the audience, to understand the seriousness of it, because again, I think that's the key moment here for everybody, is that how scary it was, or how scary it got. In a way, when you tell these stories again, we kind of gloss through it, whatever. But it sounds like it was really scary. I mean, you were, Teddie, you were at moments where you felt like you might lose your daughter, right? And then Courtney, you felt like moments you might lose your mom. So, like, in other words, this thing, it happened. I shared with you my story on the other day. Like, I actually just walked away to protect the relationship with my father. I made the choice of walking away, which, looking back and hearing your story, I wish I had done it different. But it was, I had to choose between my father and my boss, because I worked for my dad. And, so I know what that felt like to have that choice. But back to your situation, like were you, did either one of you feel, and I'm going to suspect, Courtney, you might have been a little bit more this way, but like literally on the last thread, like, I may quit tomorrow. That's how
I will say this, and I'm not proud of it. I even said to Mom, I looked her right in the face and I said, well, why don't you just quit?
She did say.
And
I thought, ooh.
And I'll tell you, and it was about a week later we were in therapy. I mean, it got ugly. It was mean, and I was not proud of who I was. But I was so confused, and so there was all this emotion, and wrapped up in it, and so much to lose, not just losing. I mean, losing your mother, that's one thing, but like, I'm talking about losing this business.
But you can always get your mother. You can always get your mother back. You can always get your mother back. You can always get your mom. You know that in the back of your mind, you can get her back. But you can't get the business back easily.
Yeah. Once that business closes, it's over. And so I just thought, we've got to fix this. And
I think that probably was the turning point, Courtney, is when you said that. I knew, and God loved her dad and my husband.
I get warm right here just hearing that line. Why don't you? Ooh, that's a good one. I'm glad you shared that.
It was ugly. It was very. I'm not proud of it. It was very ugly.
But that's the real stuff. I'm so glad you shared that. That's the stuff that I want people to, when they watch this, they kind of go, "Whoa, it was real."
It's part of being an entrepreneur. Those are things that happen. The idea, we, and I think I shared this with you before, but the idea, when people say to us, oh, I want to open a shop with my mom, or I'd love to work with my daughter. Courtney and I are always like, I'm sure you would. We're experts, and it's hard for us. So, and we've met and talked to a lot of mother-daughters, And it is a very common dynamic with everybody who works with family or has a partner that, they say, oh my God, but we've been best friends for 10 years. And then, the business changed everything. Well, that's what happens when your lifeblood is shared with someone you're very close to.
So I feel
Because
like
business.
yes, I was going to say, I feel like that things probably got better dramatically fast when you went to sit down with someone, a counselor, and you actually
Oh
went.
my God, it went so fast.
I
It
bet.
was very, very fast. And I think that once one of the things that we never did initially, as we said here in the beginning when we were talking, is that we needed to be everything to the entire business. Like both of us had to be on the same level of every business, of every aspect of business. Now, also keep in mind, this is not, a lot of people think this is mom's business and I'm just coming in to help because I'm the daughter. Well, that's not the case. The fact is we went into this thing 50-50. We are both fully responsible for the success or the failure of this company. And so, it was never like mom's in charge, I'll just let her handle that. That was never the issue. But I always felt like one of the biggest mistakes that we made from the very beginning, yes, we had a business plan, that was wonderful, but we had no roles established for the two of us.
And part of that was from the business standpoint, part of that was we were so tiny originally and so small that it felt like we would have been playing business, playing at it. It wasn't like we needed a flow chart to say this happens. As we grew and expanded and expanded the store to double the size, more than double the size, and hired people, then that did become necessary. And that's when all the personal stuff, though, was in the way. And we couldn't get to that because we couldn't get past the personal stuff.
Right.
So I do think that our counselor was amazing. We were so fortunate that we found the perfect woman for us, because Courtney and I would sit on the couch with each other, and she always said, well, I don't need to try and pull stuff out of y'all, because we have always been able to talk, because as Courtney said, that's what our family does. We don't let things simmer for a long time. This was an unusual circumstance for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
To not be able to talk about something that was hard.
And even though you had a really good counselor, that was a good fit for you, I would go on a limb to say that anybody that gets in that situation, whether they're two partners, whether they're close friends, family, or just two partners that are just trying to run a business, that even the most average counselor can probably turn them around, because just the idea of going in and sitting on, if that counselor almost doesn't have to say much technically, if it can be done well, like getting them talking and saying the things that they really want to say in a safe place, in a safe circle, is like 80%, isn't it? Roughly 80% of the problem, the challenge, right? So in other words, my message to people watching is, go get the closest.
It's just a family counselor, a family or marriage counselor.
It will almost assuredly turn things around quickly. Something about a safe zone to be able to say and speak freely is just has a dramatic effect on a relationship.
Right, and it was a safe place for us to discuss fears and being angry about things, and yet I think each of us, what she did say, it was important because we were never disrespectful of the other one, even in our counseling sessions. I mean, that was, I do think that was important.
Well, and I think also it is important to explain to people that one of the biggest things that we accomplished in our therapy is that we needed to learn how the other person communicates and really understand. And we understood, after like 2 sessions, I knew so much more about my mother and about where she's coming from about certain things. Like, it made more sense to me. And so I understood when she would say something, or the way she would say something, it made more sense to me. And I started to not internalize everything. And you know, you get into that whole, you get in your head and you think, well, it's all, you know, it's about me, and she's mad because it's something I did. And, you know, and well, let's be honest, a lot of times that's probably the case, but you know, there are other times when, you know what, she's having a bad day and she's going to say something that she doesn't mean to say.
And then your choices are, you know, instead of like the normal choices of shutting down and pouting or lashing out and reacting, which would be the old playbook, right? For most of us, right? You kind of go, wait a minute, okay. I remember we talked about this in our counseling. I remember that's just mom's way, and she doesn't mean it necessarily the way she says what she really is. And all of a sudden, you have a different lens of which you're listening to someone say something to you.
Absolutely. And I just think we learned how, you know, just like we have different work styles.
Yeah.
And it's important to distinguish between a work style and a work ethic, I think.
Right.
But just in the same way we have different work styles, we have very different communication styles.
Yeah.
And
so
that was something that we worked out, and now we can communicate. Now that doesn't mean she doesn't tell me that's the dumbest thing you've ever done,
right?
That, you know, because we still do that to each
now
other.
you can get on with normal disagreements and normal, you know, conflicts and normal stuff where you have
have a ton of.
But
right,
really,
right.
That's it. I mean, we can disagree on stuff all day long.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, you know.
You can even get mad.
Like
you can even get mad at each other right now and be all you know, kind of emotional and loud about. But you know where you're. But then it's kind of even safe then, because you kind of know there's that trust bond that you worked out in the sessions. So now it's almost like I can blow off steam without thinking that you think I'm trying to, you know, go nuclear. Like I'm just blowing off. That's wonderful. And this is like how marriage.
I think also it's important for people to know that learning how to communicate, like I'm not a yeller. I don't yell. I don't scream. I don't cuss at people. I'm not pointing any fingers, but I am direct. And what I just say what it is. Here's what we need to do, blah, blah, blah. And people take that differently. If you're in a partnership with someone, it can be perceived differently. And especially if you're close to that person on a personal basis. Right. I think that makes a big difference. Yep. But, you know, I never had to parse my words professionally. And I found myself feeling that I needed to do that more. And how is this going to be received? And then it goes into that whole thing of the tapes that are playing in your head about here's what they really meant. And I know you've heard us say this before, but, you know, Courtney, when I would say, what if we try and do it this way? She heard, your idea is stupid. You'll never do this and you're not going to be successful. And then she would reference something to me, and it was usually about something physical, or like, Mom, make sure you get some help moving that. And I would hear, you're too old to be in this business and you need to be in a nursing home. And then I would think, you know, well, I'm going to show her I can lift this whole armoire up by myself. And, you know, but those are all tapes that we have. Like, I'm thinking, should I be still doing new ventures at this point in my life? Because it never crosses my mind not to. Yeah. But that's what I was hearing.
Right. So we the tapes in our head, but, you know, we take what is being said and we put it into our own interpretive filter, and it plays against our own insecurities and our own, and what we, the intentions that we think that person has, and the insecurities that we know that we have, and then this becomes really a problem. So that's where so counseling saves marriages, and now it can save businesses, and it can save a mother and daughter relationship. So this is a great story. So I think the clear big takeaway on this, and I want you guys to summarize this for me, but the obvious one right now is to consider a certain amount of, I don't even know what the right word is. Counseling and therapy sounds like you're fixing a problem. I would almost like to say there's some preventative, what is the right word we should fish for here, when someone just gets in a room and talks about gets way ahead of this, way before it gets bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you guys still go, even though you're obviously been good, you're good now, and you've been good for many years. You put that behind you in terms of how scary and dangerous that was. You guys still go and check in, right? Maybe that's a good word for it. Check. I like that word check-in sometimes, like partners sitting down and doing a check-in with a counselor. That might be a good kind of safe word.
It is absolutely. We even have, wasn't it? Was it Heather or Trey? Remember, like a month or so ago,
It was Trey.
We were arguing about something, and Trey said,
when do you have your next counseling session?
Session? And because we're obviously very open about it, and they've even said, can't we all go together and have all four of us in there, and we get along beautifully. Everybody at our store does, but it is something that's, I think, beneficial to check in. But Courtney and I now don't let we don't let it reel out that far.
Yeah. I think that's the key.
We make sure that we're staying in the moment with it, and that. I think my favorite quote that we came away with from our counselor was, clear is kind, and kind is clear. And I thought that is so perfect, because it's a few words that describe you've got to be clear in order to keep things in that realm of being kind with each other and loving.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I'm going to make sure that we get that in the show notes. When people can see a summary of what we talked about. That's a powerful statement. Kind is clear, and clear is kind. So this is great, and we kind of know from this point, everything inflected upwards, and you guys went on to flourish as a team and as a company, as a store, and so what I want to wrap this up around the question of what advice. Maybe we'll start with you. We'll start with whoever wants to go first. Kind of business philosophy advice that you'd like to give somebody who is an aspiring entrepreneur, someone who's thinking about being an entrepreneur in the near future. And let's keep it refined to possibly going into business with a close friend or a family member, which is a lot of people, by the way. I would say, just off the top of my head, I feel like half of businesses kind of get started that way. You want to start with somebody that you already know, like, and trust, and it just feels right for all the right reasons. Aside from some of the things that we've already touched on, what are some other things that come to mind that you would say to that person about it? Tough call.
Mom, you start.
Yeah.
Well, I think that again, you've got to look, if you're going into business with a close personal friend or a family member, you've got to first address what are the hurdles.
Yeah.
It's that whole, from a totally business standpoint, doing a SWOT analysis on all of the strengths, weaknesses, obstacles, and threats. That's an important process to go through, because we knew, and we did have a conversation before we ever did this, where I said to Courtney, this retail is a hard business.
Yeah.
This is not easy. And it sounds like fun, but it's more work than fun. So you've really got to have that passion. So I would say that you've got to find your passion, but you've got to be willing to work for that passion, and you've got to be passionate about the work that you do to get to that passion. So, I mean, it's like this circle that, you know, you've got to want to do the work to reach your success.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Courtney, what would you say to someone who wants to consider going into business with a close friend or family member?
I think it is imperative that most people know how to do the beginning part. They know how to get it started. That's where entrepreneurs are usually pretty good. It's about keeping it going.
Yeah.
That's the problem and that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, what Mom and I do is we have a big kind of lock-in in January every year, right after the holidays. And we pretty much hunker down for 2 or 3 days. And we go over every single aspect of the business. What's working, what's not working, you know,
goals.
What are the goals for the coming year? What are the goals for, you know, looking ahead? Where do we see ourselves? You know, that to me, and to do that on a consistent basis, I feel like some people just kind of coast along and oh, it's, you know, it's going so, you know, so far so good, and like let's not mess this up. And so that to me is super important, that we plan and we stay on task. That's not to say you can't come up with ideas and things that are going to throw you a curveball, or, you know, you never know. But because one of my biggest fears that comes out of my mother's mouth is, I have an idea. No. I'm like, no. I said, I'm still working on like 3 ideas ago. Can I finish that one first before we, you know, but I think you get what I'm saying.
Hey, I want to ask your mom, what's the thing that she that scares her the most that comes out of Courtney's mouth? Come on, you.
Oh gosh.
What's the thing that makes you kind of go, uh-oh, she just said that?
I don't really know if I anything.
I'm going to take a couple stabs. I want to take a couple stabs. Remember you talked about procrastination. You asked her about, I'm getting to that. Or
that kind of thing. Well, I was going to say, she has code words that she uses.
Now we're talking.
I'm not so sure. So I've talked to someone else. I'm not so sure that's the best thing. But I have to be careful about tapes playing where I do translate it into thinking, does that mean she doesn't want to do it?
Yeah.
And so I really kind of take her at her word. And she has gotten, I mean, she hasn't really done a ton of procrastinating since we went through all of that, because
I have been working very hard on my procrastination.
She really has. When she says she's going to do something, she does it.
That's awesome.
And so I mean, I just think
I might be coming in hot while I'm doing it, but like, I will get that done.
Right. Because you know what? It sounds like you guys don't want to let each other down now that you've been through this thing together.
Well, you don't ever want, first of all, you don't ever want to let your mother down.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that to me just also translate, I wouldn't want to let a partner down.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't ever want to do that.
But I would feel like when you've gone through what you went through with that turnaround and that really dark place that you guys were in, that you almost lost everything, and then you did this kind of renewal. I would feel like that there would be this extra powerful feeling of not wanting to let the other person down, because it was almost like this recommitment that happened there, almost like this renewal, almost of the vows, so to speak. Like where
well, it was, and it was energizing, and I don't look at it that we were going to lose something. We were going to throw something away. It wasn't going to go away for any reason other than we weren't doing what we could to keep it in the game. It would have been our own fault if it had slipped away. It wasn't because
it would have been years wasted.
Yeah.
Just
it would
because
have
you
been a blog posted.
because you couldn't get your act together, which was you. That was those were personal problems
Yeah.
that were between you and being successful with the business.
That we didn't even know to expect because we had never experienced them
Yeah.
before.
Well, I think I'm sorry, but the coolest part is just that you powered through this. I mean, I work with founders and startups, basically for a living, and working with more than 100 for sure, and all the time. And the difference really between success and failure is always pretty simple. It's how bad do you want it, and how persistent and determined can you be about it. And those two things kind of go together. And that's ultimately what kind of pulled you through here. You found the answer. Yes, it's great that we know what the answer was, but what's really great is that you fought hard and long enough without giving up to have the answer be revealed and have the solution be revealed. And it was the difference between falling down or bowing out and pushing through. And then now there's this huge virtuous up curve that happens when you can push through something really hard. They say it's darkest just before the dawn. There's all kinds of great analogies around life. One of my favorite charts, I wish I had the infographic available right now, but it's one of my favorite infographics to show startups where all these up and down valleys. And then usually when you are at your lowest point and things all feels lost, and it's like you've years of up and down, and you feel like you're done for, the biggest setback ever. If you go back and you interview folks, it's usually right there is when the turnaround that they've been waiting for was on the verge. That's usually when it actually comes, right?
Well,
And
I agree with that 100%. We have both said we were both, I think, at a point, or the business was at a point where there were good things happening in the business, despite all the chaos behind the scenes. There were still good things that were happening, and it was like we were kind of on this, we're on the cusp of something really good and big, and that could mean good things for Coco and Dash as a brand. And
that's not the time to.
No.
Yeah, and the fear of all those years of work, hard work, and just to let personalities screw all that up. It's just you don't want to. I don't want to do that. She didn't want to do that. And
so amazing. It's so amazing. Like I said, shared with you guys before, I just so wish I could go back in time and apply some of these to my father and I. So it's really,
you can always write him a letter.
Well, my father has passed away. And
but I'm saying, even though
you can still write him a letter.
Yeah, you could. Okay, very good point. Very good. Very good point.
It's a very good exercise, and you can take it to where he is.
Wow.
And it is a very good exercise.
I appreciate that. You guys don't make me cry on my own show, okay? So
no, God, no.
We make everyone cry, apparently.
Don't do that.
No, it's been great. So this is great. I can't wait to edit this and get it posted. So where can, unless there's anything else you want to add, I guess my closing question would be what's the best way for people to reach you? Is it just hit your Instagram, Facebook, or is there an email address or anything like that you'd like to put out there?
On our website, there's an email address, and that's probably, I guess, don't you think, Courtney, Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, us on Instagram, because it's just us. I mean, it's not like anybody else does that for us. Actually, Mom does all the Instagram. I don't touch it. So, 99% of the time it's going to be Mom that's responding, and all the emails come to me, and
through the website.
Through the website. And so either one, info at Coco and not info, hello at cocoand-dash.com.
Hello at cocoand-dash.com. Finally, the question would be, if there's anybody out there who feels especially connected to your story, could they be so bold as to, drop you a note and tell you that, and maybe, connect with them on an entrepreneurial level? Typically it might be a daughter and a mother or something, or maybe not, but are you always open, as long as you are, obviously you have a job to do and you can't answer all of those, but you sound like folks that would be willing to help somebody if you could.
Absolutely.
Always.
We
Always.
get emails, you know, and we've done other speaking engagements on the topic, and we're always happy to answer questions and talk to people. Sometimes they just need to talk.
Yeah,
So,
that's pretty cool. That's really good.
so
You guys
yeah.
can
And you know what? I think too, the bottom line is you can't be a quitter. You know, quitting's not the answer.
Right. That's right.
You know, there's a time to know when to stop, but that's different from quitting.
That's
so
right.
Well, and you know what? Here's something that Mom told me when I was when I closed down Peeve, because she probably doesn't remember this, but I still to this day I have it. I wrote it down because I was like, I need to remember this, and I wrote it down. I was at her house, and I have a little piece of paper from a scratch pad that it says Ted on it because it's Teddie. So it says Ted at the top, and on it I wrote, "Failure isn't falling down; it's staying down." And it is now taped onto my vanity, and it has been there since the day she said that to me. And I have moved 3 times since then.
That's fantastic.
But it always comes with me, and that's big.
You got to keep going. I'm
That's
telling
fantastic.
y'all
You
are
gotta-
super young.
You got to get
You
up.
have to keep going.
She's
And
95.
I mean, I may have 2 months left. It's just something that I don't get. And I know this is totally on a different topic, but you know, I have so many friends that are my age or even a little younger that they'll say, I just don't know how you keep doing this. Why do you want to do this? Don't you want to just like be home? And I love being home. I am home, but why when there are things to do, if something interesting is proposed or there's an opportunity, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And I would encourage
Fantastic.
Courtney to do that. I just think that is the way you live this life that we're blessed with. You know,
Yeah.
when we are on this earth and you have the knowledge or the imagination to come up with something, then don't let someone tell you can't do it.
Well, that's a great place for us to wrap up, and I think that's how you stay young forever too. And so we know,
Or
that's
at least immature.
or at least immature. Great. All right. Thank you so much, ladies, and thank you for the extra time because I knew we were going to get into this great story, and I think so many people are going to be able to watch this and get so much from it. I think we've helped a lot of people, and I really appreciate you being on the show. I can't wait to bring you back in a year or two just to get that update. And you'll be my first non-live recorded podcast, so this will always be special to me.
Aw.
So
Well,
thank you.
you're just delightful yourself.
Thank you very much.